All right, thank you so much. It's really wonderful to be here. I thank the organizers for inviting me. And thank you, Eric, for what you said. You made it unnecessary for me to talk about political correctness. Enough said. But I want to talk a little bit about what's logical and what's common sense today, because we don't hear a lot of that. And I don't think that common sense should be something that is just for conservatives. You know, liberals and everybody else should understand and enjoy common sense also. For some strange reason, sometimes they don't. But, you know, it's very interesting, you know, the outpouring of sentiment that I received after the speech at the National Prayer Breakfast. I got so much mail, letters, books, just amazing from everybody. And some of the more poignant ones were from older Americans who said they had given up and they were just waiting to die. And now they felt a sense of revival once again. You know? And that's very sad that we have reached a point in our lives where there's so many people who feel that they're not represented anymore. And this is something I want you people who are in Congress and who are in the Senate and who are in the White House to understand. You work for the people. You represent the people. You know, if you can understand that. I also got a few nasty grams from people. How dare you insult my president? You are a N-word and you need to get back. You know, it's just unbelievable, you know. But, yeah, when did we reach a point where you have to have a certain philosophy because of the color of your skin? When did that happen? You know, a reporter once asked me why I didn't talk a lot about race. And I said, because I'm a neurosurgeon. And they thought that was pretty strange. And I said, you see, when I take someone to the operating room and I cut the scalp and peel it down and take off the bone flap and open the dura, I'm operating on the thing that makes that person who they are. The cover doesn't make them who they are. When are we going to understand that? But you know, the thing that really is important to me, and it's largely because of my own background, you know, growing up in a single-parent home in the inner city with dire poverty, terrible temper, poor self-esteem. My nickname in school was Dummy. And, you know, it was because I had a mother who believed in me. And she was always saying, Benjamin, you're much too smart to be bringing home grades like this. I brought them home anyway, but she was always saying that, you know. She was very encouraging. And, but more importantly, you know, she made sure that at some point we turned off the TV and started reading books. And, you know, she worked a lot. You know, my mother worked 3 jobs at a time. She would leave at 5 in the morning, get home at midnight. And, you know, people always said to me, well, why did you guys read the books? Your mother wasn't there. Well, she would know if you didn't read the books. And the fact of the matter is, back in those days, you had to do what your parents said. You know, you couldn't call 911 or some social worker or some psychologist who said, let the kid express themselves, you know. And there was a reason for that. But, you know, the education worked for me. You know, I started reading within a year and a half. I went from the bottom of the class to the top of the class. The same kids who were calling me dummy in the 5th grade were coming to me in the 7th grade. Benny, how do you work this problem? And I'd say, sit at my feet, youngster, while I instruct you. But maybe a little obnoxious, but it sure felt good. But, you know, the thing is, by that time, I had a very, very different impression of myself. And education is such a fundamental principle of the success of America. And we're allowing it to go under. You know, you go out there and you talk to the average person now, they may be able to tell you who won Dancing with the Stars. They may be able to tell you who won the football game. but they can't tell you anything that's important. They don't know about foreign policy. They don't even know about the way that our government works and the structure of it and what things mean. And consequently, they have become the ignorant. They have become the unprepared. This is exactly what the founders of this country warned against. They said, our system of government is based upon a well-educated and informed populace. And if our populace ever becomes anything other than that, we will become a different country. They knew what they were talking about. And as witness to that fact, Congress has a 9% approval rating. And yet we return to people at a rate of 90% to Congress. Now, what does that tell you? It tells you that people go in the voting booth and they say, there's a name I recognize. I'm going to vote for that one. You know, they have no idea whether that person represents them or not. And what I'm saying to people, the people of America today, is that we are responsible. This is a country that's for, of, and by the people, not for, of, and by the government. And if we turn it over to them, we cannot complain about what they're doing, because this is the natural course of men, and we have to hold their feet to the fire. And that's why we have these complex brains. And I don't say this just because I'm a neurosurgeon. The brain is the most complex and phenomenal organ system in the universe. Your brain, billions and billions of neurons, hundreds of billions, even trillions of interconnections. The number of interconnections you have rivals the national debt. I mean, it's just an amazing amount. And it has the ability to remember everything you've ever seen, everything you've ever heard. Your brain can process more than 2 million bits of information in 1 second. And the reason that human beings have these gigantic frontal lobes is because we're the creatures that have the ability to extract information from the past, integrate that with information of the present, and project that into the future. Which means we can be proactive, we can plan, we can strategize. We don't have to just react. And yet, that's what animals do, react. And a lot of people today have decided that they rather react like animals rather than planning and strategizing. And this is what we've done now. We're reacting to, what we see as our fiscal woes without planning for the future, without really caring about what is happening to the next generation. And you don't have to be a brain surgeon or a rocket scientist to understand that if we continue to spin ourselves into oblivion, we are going to destroy our nation. If I were trying to destroy this nation, if you just, let's say you magically put me, into the White House, and now, all right, I take it back. but let's say somebody were there, and they wanted to destroy this nation. What would you do? Let me tell you what I would do. First of all, I would create division among the people. I would have everybody pitted against each other, because a wise man by the name of Jesus once said, a house divided against itself cannot stand. And then I would encourage a culture of ridicule for basic morality and the principles that made and sustained the country. And then I would undermine the financial stability of the country and drive it so far into debt that there was absolutely no chance that it could recover. And I would weaken the military and destroy the morale of the military. That's what I would do, and I guarantee you it would work. Now, the question is, it appears coincidentally that those are the very things that are happening right now. And the question is, how do we stop it? Can we stop it? Or must we inexorably followed the same kind of path that other pinnacle nations have followed before their destruction, because all of those things that I just mentioned are the things that happened to other pinnacle nations before their fall. And, you know, this is not something that has just started in the last 4 or 5 years. This has been going on for quite some time now. So let's not lay all the blame on any one particular person. But the fact of the matter is, we all have a responsibility to recognize what is going on and to use our influence to correct some of these things. You know, one of the things that my wife and I have done is, you know, I go into the schools and we see all these trophies, all-state basketball, all-state wrestling, all-state this, that, and the other. The quarterback was the big man on campus. What about the academic superstar? What did they get? You know, a National Honor Society pen, pat on the head, there, little nerd, you know. Nobody really cared about them. And, you know, I was aware of a survey that was done in 22 countries looking at the ability of 8th grade equivalents to solve math and science problems. We were one of the 22 countries, and we came in number 21 out of 22, barely beat out number 22. And I was devastated, and I said, we've got to do something about this. And we can't wait for the government to do something about this. We, as the private sector, have got to do something. So we started giving out scholarships out of our own pocket to children from all backgrounds who achieved at the highest possible levels academically and also demonstrated humanitarian qualities, that they cared about other people. And we gave out our first 25 scholarships 17 years ago, and just in the state of Maryland. And now, today, we have over 5,000 scholars in all 50 states. And these are incredibly bright young people. And in fact, just yesterday, I found out that one of our scholars was accepted into the neurosurgery residency at Johns Hopkins. So, fantastic. But the other component of the program is we put in reading rooms. And in that case, we particularly target Title I schools, where a lot of the kids come from homes with no books, and they go to schools with no libraries. Those are the ones who drop out of school. We have a 30% high school dropout rate. We really can't afford that. So we create these rooms that no kid could possibly pass it up. And they get points for the number of books they read, and they can trade them in for prizes. And in the beginning, they do it for the prizes, but after a while, it begins to translate into much better academic performance, and that's really the goal. Because you see, we can't afford to throw any of those young people away. Because for every one of those young people we keep from going down that path of self-destruction, that's one less person that you have to protect yourself and your family from, one less person you have to pay for in the penal or the welfare system, one more tax-paying productive member of society who may discover a new energy source. We need all of them. And the humanitarian part of the program, of the Carson Scholars Fund, is every bit as important as the academic part. Because you see, we are a humanitarian nation. And historically, we have been. Many people don't know this, but socialism started as a reaction to America. Because people in Europe, they looked at us and they said, wait a minute, look at those Americans. You got people like Ford and Kellogg and Vanderbilt, Rockefeller, Carnegie Mellon. They got so much money. And look at everybody else who's got nothing. And you can't run a system like that. You have to have an overarching government that receives the funds and redistributes it in a fair and equitable way. Have you ever heard that before? Well, what they didn't realize is that all those names that I just said, instead of like the land barons of Europe hoarding money and passing it down from generation to generation, instead they built the infrastructure of this nation. They put in the transcontinental railroad. They built factories and textile mills. They built the mechanism that created the most powerful and dynamic middle class the world has ever seen, which rapidly took us to the pinnacle. They built universities and museums and charitable organizations, because that has been the nature of Americans. We have always been generous. Nobody is starving on the streets. We've always taken care of them. We have churches, which actually are a much better mechanism for taking care of the poor because they are right there with them. This is one of the reasons that we give tax deductions to churches, because they do that. So why is the government trying to duplicate what they're supposed to be doing? You know, we need to start thinking smartly about the way that we use our resources, use our money. And, you know, in 2009, 40 of the wealthiest families in America pledged to give away half of their wealth to charity. Go someplace else in the world and ask the 40th wealthiest families to give away half their wealth. They'll look at you like you got 6 heads. This is an American phenomenon. We take care of our own. We always have. It is not the government's responsibility. It is our responsibility as citizens. And then, as long as we're talking about fairness, let's talk about taxes. You know, some people criticize me at the prayer breakfast for bringing up God and the Bible. I mean, it is a prayer breakfast, right? I understand that. But at any rate, you know, if God thinks proportionality is fair, who are we to say that it is unfair? The minute you begin to deviate away from proportionality, you begin to inject your own philosophy. And that is always going to lead you in one direction or another. I think that's why God had a program like that. You make $10 billion, you put in $1 billion. You make $10, you put in $1. You know, the guy who paid $1 billion just put in $1 billion times more than the other guy, but they get the same rights. What could be fairer than that? That's ridiculous. Now, I'll tell you what is not fair. What is not fair is when you exempt some people and you say, there, you poor little thing. You don't have to pay anything. We'll take care of you. You know what? To me, that's very offensive, having grown up poor, because what you're saying is that I, the superior elite one, will take care of you. Why? Because you see, that superior elite group needs to be superior and elite. And they can't be superior and elite unless you have a whole bunch of people down there groveling around. So you keep them down there by feeding them. You know? But the other ulterior motive is, if everybody doesn't have skin in the game, then you can just persecute this 1% or this 2% or this 5%. If everybody has skin in the game, you have to be responsible. Because if you come talking about raising taxes, you're raising taxes on everybody. You better have a darn good reason. Doesn't matter about 1 or 2%, but it really matters about everybody. That's what's fair. And then, just briefly, I don't have time to really go into it, but let me tell you something. Healthcare, 1/6 of our economy, if the government can control that, they can control just about everything. We need to understand what is going on, because there are much more economic models that can be used to give us good health care than what we have now. And we were asleep at the wheel to let it happen, but we have to find a way still to make it work. And if we have to work within the framework of the Affordable Health Care Act, fine. If we can find a way to defund it, fine. But we have to find more efficient ways. Think about this. 80% of the encounters between a patient and a healthcare provider could easily be handled by a health savings account. 80% of the encounter, without the need to insinuate a third party or bureaucracy which sucks out at least a third of the money. And, there are ways that we can do this. We can use bridge insurance and catastrophic insurance. Some of the, I don't want to call them morons, but it's something similar to that, who say, well, Carson just talks about HSAs. How are you going to pay for it? How are you going to have catastrophic health care? Read the book. Read the book, America the Beautiful, and some other things that I've written. It'll show you how to do that. But obviously, I'm thinking about those things. I mean, it just, I don't know, it's almost laughable, some of the things that I hear people say who criticize you. They say, he's a neurosurgeon, so he couldn't know anything about economics. It's not brain surgery. And I can tell you this much, even as a lowly brain surgeon. If you have the highest corporate tax rates in the world, then of course corporations are going to have money elsewhere. Corporations are not in business to be social welfare organizations. They are there to make money. And a wise government knows how to use that to their advantage. There is a ton of money outside this country and inside this country just waiting to be unleashed to make all kinds of jobs and opportunities if we just treat them as our friends and not as our enemies. And finally, we have to resist this war on God. I mean, people don't want to talk about God, and don't you ever dare mention Jesus Christ. And this is supposed to be a country where we have freedom of religion and freedom of speech. It is absolutely absurd. Let's let everybody believe what they want to believe. And that means PC police. Don't you be coming down on the people who believe in God and who believe in Jesus. If they want to put something out that shows their belief, they have every right to do that. And we need to know, we need to understand that we are not each other's enemies in this country. And it is only the political class that derives its power by creating friction. It is only the media that derives its importance by creating friction, that uses every little thing to create this chasm between people. This is not who we are. We have much more in common with each other than we have apart. And we have to be smart enough to understand that. And we have to live by godly principles of loving your fellow man, of caring about your neighbor, of developing your God-given talents to the utmost so that you become valuable to the people around you, of having values and principles that guide your life. And if we do that, not only will we remain a pinnacle nation, but we will truly have one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much.
All right. Yeah. How do you think it went? Went okay?
I think it was fantastic.
All right, I'm going to play the role of Dick Cavett, a friend of mine, and ask you some questions. But I can't think of anything. Did you announce that you're leaving medicine?
Oh, I didn't announce that. In 106 days, I will be retiring. And, I'll be 62 years old in September. And I strongly believe that there's a reason that pilots are asked to retire before they start crashing airplanes.
I can see you got... He's got the shakes. I can see it. I'm up close here. He's got the shakes. Yeah, you need to get out of that. Quick.
So I'd much rather quit while I'm at the top of my game.
Yeah.
And there's so many more things that can be done.
Really? All right. So that's the big announcement. Dr. Carson is getting out of medicine. I've got a little announcement to make.
Okay.
You're getting out of brain surgery. In about 100 days, I'm going to be getting into brain surgery. Yeah, I'm going into medicine. And, you know, how tough could it be, right? It's not brain surgery. So, obviously, people are asking the question, are you leaving medicine so that you can do other things, maybe in the political sphere? Would you at least guardedly say possibly?
Well, I would say, you know, I'm very dedicated to education of the next generation. And I encourage everybody to go to carsonscholars.org and look us up and see how you can get involved. Once we get that taken care of, who knows what I might do.
Yes, you can tell. I was going to say, this is a very sophisticated political audience, and they can tell that you've entered politics because you're not answering that question straight. Obviously, we can see what's happening, and you can't say anything publicly. And let me say, if you're looking for a white guy on the ticket, I'm your man.
I will just say I'm only interested in the brain.
Only interest in the brain. My brain's pretty pink. We'll talk backstage. What do you see happening? I mean, I spoke about religious freedom. I really do believe that we're having a conversation in America right now, at least some of us are having a conversation about the idea that we are headed to a cliff fiscally, that if we don't get the debt under control, if we don't reverse engines, if we don't feed the free market and deregulate and enable the market to do what it's meant to do, we will lose our freedom. But I really do believe that religious freedom is the thing that nobody's talking about, and that they're somehow linked. They're linked. I mentioned Os Guinness's book of Free People's Suicide. In there, he shows the inextricable link, this golden triangle, which the founders knew. You talk about education.
Right.
What scandalizes me, Dr. Carson, is that at least 2 generations. I went to school in the 70s. No one taught us about the founders' idea of ordered liberty.
Right.
How can you have a generation of Americans and another generation of Americans really be America if we don't even know? I mean, because to be an American, it's not your blood type,
right.
It's not your ethnic group, it's an idea.
Exactly.
And once the citizens don't even know what it is that they have and what they're supposed to protect and promulgate, how can we be America?
Well, you know, that was the reason that I wrote America the Beautiful.
Did you write a book?
I wrote a book.
Can we get that? Is that possible? Can we get that on Amazon? Or
You're not supposed to mention that.
how do I get this wonderful product?
Because then the left says you're only there to promote your book.
It's obvious that you don't care about anything except money. So go ahead.
Although,
yeah, it's obvious. All these doctors, I know. Go ahead.
Although I do appreciate the fact that people have bought it, and it's last week was #1 on the New York Times bestseller. That's good.
Let me say, speaking as an author, I deeply resent you. Bonhoeffer, I believe, is available. Yeah. Go ahead.
But the fact of the matter is, because people don't know our history, because they don't know who we are, they don't recognize those forces which are changing.
That's the point. No, that was effectively my point. I thought you were listening.
Yeah, I was. I appreciate the fact that you negated the need for me to say several things. It was great.
Good. But you still went over time. Did you know that? And we're just about out of time right now. Well, in the few minutes we have left, let me just say how wonderful it was to hear your speech. I was in the room at the National Prayer Breakfast, not just last year when I was the speaker, but I was in the room to hear you. And what I found interesting, and maybe we can close with this, when you said what you said, it didn't come across in the spirit in which you said it as stinging or as though you were trying to humiliate anybody. On the contrary, I thought you spoke with grace and civility because, you know, as Christians, as Christians, we're commanded to love our enemies. So it means we will have enemies, political or whatever, but we're commanded to treat them with grace, because we know that if it weren't for the grace of God, we would probably be on the other side of these issues. So the fact that you did that, I thought, oh, you don't think so? Yeah. All right, we'll talk later. But I was going to say the fact that you did do that was very important, and I was dismayed that the punditocracy, most of the folks in the conservative world, were kind of spiking the ball and doing the end zone dance at what you said, which colored those remarks in a way that I thought was not appropriate, because the grace with which you spoke those eternal verities was, to me, as important as what you said. And I just want to say to my fellow conservatives, that is very important. Truth is a person for those of us who claim to be believers, and that we need to express the truth with civility and love. Otherwise, it's magically not the truth anymore. So I want to commend you for doing that. We're way out of time, so God bless you.
Thank you.